Thank you so much for coming. My name's Skyler Johnson. I'm the Director of Development, Communications, and Advocacy with New Hour for Women and Children. And it's so inspiring to see you all here coming out today on this beautiful and warm day to advocate for such a critical issue. As all of you know, in early June, the United States will hit its debt ceiling, and we either need to raise the debt ceiling or risk a default. Every time this issue comes up with a Republican majority in DC, we have talks about spending, about cutting spending. There's a clear solution here. If we want to have a clean debt ceiling, we need to let the tax credits for the ultra-rich expire. But do you think that's what the majority in DC is talking about? That's not what the majority in DC is talking about. Instead, they are discussing cuts to SNAP, to Medicare, to WIC, to all of the programs that let our poorest and most vulnerable communities thrive. This would be entirely devastating for our most vulnerable populations, for our working class. If the United States defaults, we will lose 1 million jobs in the first week and 8 million jobs if it goes on for multiple weeks. We would have SNAP payments be delayed, Medicaid payments be delayed, and critically, 66 million Americans would see delays to Social Security. We cannot afford that. That raises the problem of economic collapse if we see that happen. We would have veterans services delayed, issues of housing delayed. We have 4 Republican representatives here on Long Island. We have Representative Nick LaLota in District 1. We have Representative Andrew Garbarino in District 2, Representative George Santos in District 3, and Representative Anthony D'Esposito in District 4. All 4 of our representatives voted to cut SNAP, to cut Medicaid, to cut WIC, to cut access to these benefits. This is a critical issue for all of us. It's a public safety issue. It's a homelessness issue. It's a food insecurity issue. As you're going to hear from all of our speakers today, this is a multifaceted and intersectional issue that cuts across the spectrum of America and will affect millions upon millions of individuals. It will affect the entire country, quite frankly. And we need to make sure that we're advocating, that we are taking a stand, so that way we can have a clean debt ceiling without cuts to our programs. Right. The name of our program today is Care Not Cuts, and that's exactly what we need. We need to stop putting the poorest and most vulnerable Americans on the line every time Washington decides that we need to cut spending. We need to start making sure that those of us who are working to just survive are not being thrown under the bus instead of making cuts to the rich. At the end of today, we're going to ask you to take an action. We're going to ask you to advocate with us to make sure that these cuts don't happen and we have a clean debt ceiling. Right now, as we speak, negotiations are happening in Washington. We cannot have a better time for this. We have another opportunity, even after our representatives have voted for these cuts, to make sure that they do the right thing and let the poorest Americans survive, not take food off their tables. So before we dive in, before I pass it on to all our speakers, I do want to thank all of our sponsors here today. So first of all, thank you to Thera Farms for letting us have the event here today. So our co-sponsors for the event are Sisters of St. Joseph Brentwood, Network Advocates for Catholic Social Justice, the Sisters of Mercy of the Americas, Daughters of Wisdom, Sisters of St. Dominic Amityville, Sisters of Charity New York, the U.S. Federation of the Sisters of St. Joseph, New York State Council of Churches, New Hour for Women and Children Long Island, the Campaign for New York Health, Long Island Jobs with Justice, Social Justice Committee of the UU Congregation at Shelter Rock. And I want to thank everyone here, and I want to thank our incredible lineup of speakers, because each of you is here to speak on just one section of this multifaceted issue that, as I have said many times, will very negatively impact millions of Americans, everyone here, everyone across our nation, if we do not convince our representatives to do the right thing. So I now want to welcome up Sister Tesa from the Sisters of St. Joseph Brentwood to do a welcome and opening prayer.
Thank you, Skyler. May we be as impassioned as you are. Let's give Skyler a wonderful round of applause. We welcome everyone on this glorious day to our beautiful Brentwood campus, especially our Long Island neighbors and the network community of Catherine and Colin. Today is a lived example of our Sisters of St. Joseph charism to unite all in God's love. We are all united in our efforts to speak with one voice about the needs of our brothers and sisters who are struggling with basic needs. hardworking families, people with disabilities, children aging out of the foster care system, and our neighbors who labor to support their families on a daily basis. And for this, let us pray. Loving and Creator God, God of many names and faces, we gather together today to seek your wisdom and guidance on those empowered by our electorate to make just and equitable laws to protect housing, food, and medicine for the vulnerable and the most marginalized in our midst. Yes, united we pray for care, not cuts. May our voices rise up, united in the power of your Spirit, to transform the minds and the hearts of our legislators into life-affirming government support for our neighbors and our loved ones in need. Grant us all the courage and the vision to live the gospel in word and deed. And to this we say, amen. And to this we say, amen. And now I have the happy privilege of introducing Melanie from Campaign for New York Health.
Thank you, sister. What a moving prayer. I think I'm going to keep the energy up. So I'm going to start off with a little chant. I'm going to say, fight, fight, fight. And you're going to say, healthcare is a right. You ready? Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Come on. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. Last time. Fight, fight, fight. Healthcare is a right. That's right. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. My name is Melanie DeRigo. I'm the Executive Director for the Campaign of New York Health. Thank you. I've spent my career as an allied health professional working to improve population health management, and I've spent much of the last decade as a healthcare advocate in the pursuit of comprehensive healthcare for all. In that time, I have come to the conclusion that there is nothing more fundamental to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness than our human right to health care. And that is why I stand here today with this unfathomable, sinking feeling in my gut. We find ourselves in this position a week and a half away from the United States defaulting on our debt ceiling, where the GOP-controlled House of Representatives is raising the debt ceiling hostage in exchange for kicking our most vulnerable off of their health care. A newly passed GOP House bill would enact a provision to take away coverage for millions of working families and over 1 million New Yorkers. It would increase medical debt for millions of working families, further damaging an already struggling economy. Now, while the GOP may try to sell their Medicaid proposal as a job creator, well, studies point to the exact opposite. And if there's anything we've learned this last few years, it is that facts matter. The GOP debt plan demands that children of billionaires get tax breaks, while the children of low-income families get denied the care they need to thrive. Stripping away health care is a direct attack on women, children, black and brown communities, low-wage workers, the LGBTQ+ community, and people with disabilities. This is who they're targeting. And it is a direct attack on our society. It is incumbent on each and every one of us here today that we stand with our brothers, our sisters, and our children who will bear the negative impacts of this GOP-led crusade against our most vulnerable. You know, their plan calls for the CEOs who profit from war to write off their private jets on their taxes, and the people who fought in those wars to be denied health care. Now that's not right. That ain't right. Science tells us that healthy populations create thriving, more productive, and safer communities. Now, as we recover from a pandemic that has left millions of Americans suffering with long COVID and created a mental health crisis for children, now is not the time to cut access. In fact, now is the time to expand access to health care. I'm here today to ask you to join me to fight for comprehensive single-payer health care that leaves no one behind, everyone in and no one out. Because I am sick and tired of a government that preys on our most vulnerable. So my organization is taking the fight for health care all the way to make sure that every resident has the health care they need when they need it. And I hope you'll join us in this fight. You can find out more at nyhcampaign.org. And I want to remind you, as you heard, negotiations are going on right now. Please call not just your Congress member, but every single Congress member on Long Island. Express your disdain and your disgust for their cruelty and their inhumanity. Remind them and urge them to seek their soul, find whatever is left in that darkness, and demand care, not cuts. Say it with me. Care, not cuts. Care, not cuts. Care, not cuts. One more time. Care, not cuts. Thank you so much. My name is Melanie DeRigo with the Campaign for New York Health, and it is my esteemed honor and pleasure to introduce Vivian Hart of Pronto, Long Island.
Well, how do I follow that? Very impassioned, just like every single person that's here today. Very impassioned for the people that have needs, for the people that come across your office, your organizations, your homes, the streets that we live in, all of us. People are in need. We know that people are in need. I could speak to only what I see at Pronto. Just imagine 5,000 people a month needing food. They wouldn't come to Pronto if they didn't need food and clothes and the very basic resources. Now just multiply that. I mean, you've heard the large numbers of people that are in need. But right here in this community, if they make those cuts, 5,000, you can imagine what that's going to be every month. Is that sustainable? No, it's not sustainable. And we cannot see our neighbors walking down the street now in need. How is that going to be after these cuts are passed? We can't allow those cuts to be passed. We need to make sure, and I'm preaching to the choir, right? We need to make sure that our legislators, our public officials who we voted into place, hear our cry, our outreach to them to help us. Food is the very basic thing that could be offered to somebody. We purchase food, we go to the supermarkets, and what are you seeing in the supermarkets today? The high prices of food, the very basic thing. Now, we don't want to see anybody go without food. But if these cuts come into play, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about rationing, as if we were in a war zone, as if we were a third world country. We are the most richest country in the world, and here we are talking about cutting food to children, cutting food to seniors, cutting food to the disabled. That is, I have no words. It's heartbreaking. And we need to let our public officials know, do not cut these funding to the very neediest people in our community, people that want to be supportive, people that want to work, children that need to go to school with a full belly of food so they can concentrate in their education. But if there are cuts, how are we going to sustain that? Rationing is not the answer. We need to make sure that the funding is available. Thank goodness, thank God that He's put such wonderful people in place to help supplement. But what happens when all the funding that they have to offer is drained? The government needs to step up, and we need to make them responsible. God grant us success. And now it is my wonderful privilege to introduce two beautiful people from Mercy Haven, John Castellano, and Marlena Buds.
Thank you. Among the gifts that occurred to me on this wonderful day is to be introduced by Pronto, because in my first year of practicing law for the poor was 1977, and we would share referrals between Nassau Suffolk Law Services and Pronto. So here I am. I used to have dark hair, but now it's 46 years later, and the last 26 have been with Mercy Haven, where I'm the managing attorney of what's called the Mercy Advocacy Program. Within a housing agency, Mercy Haven, decided after 9 years of functioning that we needed an in-house legal services program to serve the 300 people that we house with their battles with Social Security, public assistance, Medicaid, disability benefits, and now I'm speaking more loudly. So, a little more history, and I'll speak quickly, I hope. Don't we know that the Lord hears the cry of the poor from Psalm 34? Don't we know from Matthew 25 that we're directed to look for the lonely, the homeless, the hungry, the oppressed, the naked? And we know that also from the Quran. And for the folks who don't profess in a living God, we share a commitment to social justice. And Catherine McCauley, the founders of the Mercy Sisters, and I'm a lay associate with my dear wife, tells us that the poor need help today and not next week. More history. 1938, picture the Great Depression. There's a state constitutional convention. An amendment is passed to our state constitution saying that the aid, support, and care of the needy is the utmost concern. In 1977, the Court of Appeals said that's an affirmative duty. Put that in the faces, gently of course, of legislators and say, did you forget? Do you forget the Psalms? Do you forget the New Testament? Do you forget the Quran? Do you forget your own constitutional history? We need a clean debt ceiling. And that means what? Clean. Without the dreadful cost of hitting the SNAP program. That used to be called food stamps, by the way, but Congress delegitimized that concept by saying SNAP. Judge, my client lost SNAP benefits. What do you got, crack? No. That means food stamps, right? It means rent subsidies. It means public assistance. It means disability benefits. And it means women's, infant, and children. It's now my pleasure to introduce my friend Marlena Bug. And Marlena puts the face of poverty, the face of risks to her subsistence right before us. Marlena?
Hi. I'm nervous, so you gotta forgive me. Hi. I'm Marlena Bug, and I was on public assistance in 2012, but thank God I'm on Social Security now. Back then I was receiving $309 and $183, which was $492, and I wasn't making ends meet. So you imagine now if they want to cut the SNAP benefits, if they want to cut housing and everything else. Thank God I live in Mercy Haven, which is 30% of my income. And I don't know what I would do without that. And even though I receive Section 8, I need these benefits. When I say I need these benefits in order to live, I need these benefits. Back then, they wanted to cut my food stamps. They cut my food stamps down to $16. They cut my food stamps down to $16, and I said I don't know what I was going to do. So then they said fair hearing. Fair hearing what? They thought they was going to throw me under the bus. But I proved them wrong. I said I'm going to drive this bus. I drove the bus and I won my fair hearing. I won my fair hearing back, so now I receive $281. But is that enough? No, because I still have to go to the churches and the pantries in order to fill my cabinets. But it's okay. Today I say, okay, I received my SSI, which we're not going to talk about right now because I don't feel comfortable. But, and still, they want to take away the WIC. I was on WIC with my infant children. Before I got pregnant, while I was pregnant, I was on WIC. After I had my children, I was still on WIC. They want to take that away from us. There's so many things in place that we need. I am that face. There's other people out here that are that face. The economy in the supermarket, they want to raise the food prices and everything. There's so much things that we can't afford. I'm a borderline diabetic, and there's food nutrition that we need, that we go in the supermarket, that we have to pick and choose what we have to eat these days, and it's not fair. It's not fair to none of us. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to my mom. It's not fair to any of us. So, you know, when the Lord says, who am I? I'm that person. I'm that person that's going to come out. I'm not that person that's going to fight. I'm going to fight for everything that I need. Did I work at one time? Yes, I did. But I'm unable to work now because of my health. I have co-payments and everything when it comes to my Medicaid. I need a Buterol and everything, which is $12 a pack. I have to pay for my asthma treatment and everything, which costs money. They want to attach an HMO because they tell you if you don't get an HMO, they're going to take away your benefits. Then you still have to fight. You have to fight for so much more. Then when you call the Congress people and everything, they put you on a hold. They switch you to this person. They switch you to that person. What are we supposed to do as not only minorities, as the small people that they consider us? We are not small people. We are giants. If we all come together and we speak and we stick together, we are giants. So you can imagine what we can do out here. If we all get on the line and get on the phone and call our congressmen and we write letters and everything, we could do so much more, and we could do a lot. That's all I want to say. And the next person, thank you for hearing me. The next person I want to introduce is Serena Martin-Liguori from New Hour for Women and Children of Long Island. I'm sorry if I was nervous.
Thank you, Marlena. It truly feels full circle to be here with you today. As the Executive Director of New Hour for Women and Children of Long Island, we work with justice-impacted women, children, and families across Long Island. And to date, we have worked with over 9,000 Long Island women and children. I want to say thank you to the Sisters of St. Joseph. Behind me are two giants for me, Father Frank and Sister Tesa, who held me up when I was accepting SNAP benefits. I think it is truly incredible to think about the community we have here with us. This is the community that the federal government does not want to see. We are the community that matters. And I can say, as someone who was the working poor for almost 3/4 of my life, my grandmother worked for the WIC program as a case manager, came from Puerto Rico to Brentwood to make a better life for our family. And one thing I will say is that these cuts are immoral and inhumane. As a Long Islander, it is our job to think about every single person and family and child. What we aren't seeing are the children who will go without, the mothers coming home from incarceration who depend on every single penny that they can receive to take care of their children. We know those women. Danielle's in the jail every other day. We see the faces of the women in crisis because of this rollback to SNAP benefits. What we're going to see is more crisis if this happens. And I will also say today that there is a huge flow of hatred against asylum seekers. We were there yesterday. I know it's off topic, but I have to tell you, we need to stand up for our asylum seekers and our refugees. We've got a lot of folks. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, but truly heartened to see the beautiful support of our community. From Thera Farms to community agriculture to the space in Brentwood here, I'm proud to be a part of this community. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce Laura Harding from Erase Racism.
It's hard to follow all of these great speakers. Let me take my sunglasses off. It's hard to follow all of these great speakers here today, but I had to come. I want to thank Reverend Peter Cup and the Network Advocates for Catholic Social Justice who invited me to be here today for this important, and our other partners who are here for this important rally. Erase Racism has spent more than 20 years exposing forms of racial discrimination and advocating for laws and policies that eliminate racial disparities. And so it's fitting in this time that we come today to specifically ask our congressional representatives to reverse their votes and ensure that we receive a clean debt ceiling and that we reverse these proposed cuts for our most essential needs, for our most essential community members, and also for the way that it helps to maintain institutional and structural racism by creating barriers and to access for services, and also creating deep cuts to important programs and funding that have been key to helping federal funding become more equitable. I want to say that at a time when all Long Islanders and all Americans are facing a housing crisis due to low housing stock, high housing costs, and high interest rates, to implement the cuts that are being suggested, in addition to the cuts that will affect over 1 million people based on the SNAP cuts, it is imperative that you call, and I'm going to say their names so we know who to call. We need to call Andrew Garbarino, George Santos, Nick LaLota, and Anthony DeEsposito. And we need to let them know that we are not taking this, that we are disappointed and we expect better. We expect to be protected on Long Island. We pay enough taxes. We are struggling with a lack of housing. Our seniors are already underwater, working every day trying to get food and stay alive. Our families are inundated. We're seeing record numbers at our food pantries. Record numbers. Our health disparities are huge. Now is not the time after a global pandemic, especially that disproportionately affected communities of color and seniors, to implement these heartless cuts. We're not going to stand for it, and we're going to ask each and every one of you to activate your community, to make these phone calls, and more importantly, to get out the vote if changes are not made. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Father Francis Pizzarelli from Hope House Ministries.
It's a privilege for me to be able to be a part of today's celebration, really mindful of where government is in regards to serving the needs of the poor. I've spent 43 years working in the trenches with the most vulnerable among us. And I don't take government money, although I think we need it, because so much government money sets people up for failure. You know, we talk about all of the needs that people have in our county. I can tell you that Suffolk County's social welfare system is a disgrace because it doesn't empower people to wholeness, it empowers them to be under the barrel, to be buried under. And I see it every day. And as we call for no more cuts, we need to urge in our county more resources for the mentally ill and those that are battling addiction. The heart of what I do is working with recovering addicts. It is scandalous that there are no beds in Suffolk County for the heroin addict that's found on the street, but because he doesn't have insurance or the appropriate insurance to get coverage. And so oftentimes he's left to die. We don't see that in the press because that's not nice, because that reflects not only on the politicians but on our healthcare system that really needs to be challenged. And the church needs to be challenged. We're worried about asylum seekers coming to the county. Well, the Catholic Church has more empty buildings, more empty convents that should be utilized for the poor. That's right. And it's just very interesting. We have a couple of courageous Catholic priests in the back, and Peter Cook from the Council of Churches. Where are the rest of them? Why aren't they here? Why isn't Provenzano and Barris here to hear what you have to say? Because government is stubborn. It's going to be hard to change them. But if we get the church to practice what it preaches about social justice, we might see some change. Thank you for the opportunity.
My name is Angel Reyes. I'm the Long Island organizing coordinator with Make the Road New York. First of all, thank you. Thank you to the sisters for always allowing us to make this much noise on campus. It's an honor to be in the presence of amazing people here, but I definitely want to highlight, someone that I find an inspiration in the fight of immigrant workers and social justice, which is Sister Rosalie. And also someone that has been a mentor and someone that I look up to, which is Sister Karen Burke. And thank you to Thera Farms. I don't know if Teddy Volkes is here. I don't know if he's the owner still, but probably out there working. But thank you. Make sure you don't step on the crops, please. I mean, it's hard, right? What can we say? I mean, for the people that have been working with working families and with immigrant communities for the last few years, I mean, in my lifetime, it's been the worst years, right? I've lost people that I love. I've seen people in the community struggle, not being able to work, not even having an idea how they're gonna make it through COVID, right? And as soon as we're out of, if anything, I don't even think we're out of COVID, right? But as soon as we're out of the worst part of the pandemic, like they hit us with this, right? And I mean, I know we can say that, Republicans in Congress have no heart for doing this, but at least we can say that the timing is awfully convenient, right? I'm a constituent of George Santos. I know. It's fun, right? And I can say that the Long Island Congress people are in utterly disconnection with the needs of the community, right? Something that we need to think, and especially when it comes to social safety nets, right? It's not really about covering the necessities of the moment, even though that's one of the important parts, but it's also thinking about the future, right? And the investment in low-income communities, right? And the connection between people having access to these services and the ability for children to graduate high school, right? And the ability for families to stay together, right? Having access to these services and the ability for people of color in low-income community to not get mixed with the criminal justice system, right? And when we see our Congress people disregard this notion, because they know this, right? They know about the importance of social safety nets. We see that it's not only an attack on our needs right now, but it's also an attack on our future and the future of our people and the ability for social mobility and the ability for the working class to continue progressing in this country, right? And one last thing that I want to mention is that we also are in a moment where, like, we see lack of leadership from Albany, right? From Governor Hochul. There was an opportunity to raise minimum wage to the levels that it was needed, right? It was an opportunity to give access to coverage and medical coverage for undocumented people, right? So this is the worst time to be cutting services for people, right? Especially if there's a lack of leadership in giving them an equal working ground when it comes to income and when it comes to opportunity. So all I want to say is that, I'm calling for, President Biden and Senator Chuck Schumer to hold the line, to fight against this initiative, and that's what I wanted to say. Thank you. And I want to introduce Monique Fitzgerald from the Long Island Progressive Coalition.
All right, hello everyone. It's a beautiful day out, right? So, can't hear me? Oh, okay. I'm short. All right, cool. So I wanted to say my name is Monique Fitzgerald. I come to you as the climate justice organizer at Long Island Progressive Coalition, but I also come to you as a person who grew up in poverty, on these programs, Medicaid and food stamps as well, raised my son on food stamps as well. through various family members that helped me get him through to his adulthood. So I really feel everyone's concern that is going through it right now today. So I want to extend that compassion. And so one of the things that's happening during this debt ceiling conversation is they want to cut our Medicaid, they want to cut our SNAP benefits, and that's going to put us in a situation of severe harm when they also are talking about reforming our permitting. So what that is these polluting infrastructures that are in our communities. We see them in high industrial areas, our power plants, landfills, waste transfer stations, like the one that they're trying to propose, they approved here in Brentwood. So this is what I want to say is that we have compounding issues that are showing up in people's lives, and we can't stand for any of it, right? We need to make sure that we have full health care. We need to make sure that we have full benefits to feed our families, and make sure that we are in our healthiest conditions that we can possibly have, and stop them from bringing these infrastructures to our communities, and so that we have a voice in all of that. So these things intersect every single day, and we don't notice that all the time, but we need to recognize that when we don't have Medicaid, when we don't have food stamps, and when we are fast-tracking poisonous, toxic infrastructure in our communities, we are at a deficit. We are in a dangerous situation. So this is crisis level. We have to make sure that we get all of these things together so that our families are whole. And that's pretty much all I want to say today. Thank you all for inviting me today, and for everyone who organized this event. And I want to bring up Hannay, Halasz from the Long Island Jobs with Justice.
Thank you, Monique, and thank you to all the speakers that came before me, and to all the speakers coming after me. I work at Long Island Jobs with Justice. We stand up for the rights of working people, and we stand up for economic justice. And this is a very relevant issue because over 50% of the people who receive these social safety nets are actually working people. Now, why in God's world is somebody working full-time, if not more, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week, and still having to depend on these social safety nets? That is not the world that I think we want to be living in. We are here today to denounce these ongoing attempts by our country's decision makers to harm and disenfranchise working people. We are here today standing on the side of justice, love, and compassion, not because we want to make a difference, but because we know and we can make a difference, and we will. A budget is a moral document that reflects the choices and priorities of our country. And it is clear that these priorities are those of profit, power, and control. The people who represent us can't be further away from wanting to understand and see us, let alone care about the basic human needs that we have, like stable employment and housing, nutritious food, health care, and safety for our children. This isn't just about the government and people being held hostage. This is a blatant attack on working people, on the hungry, on the homeless and work insecure, on children, on veterans, on the disabled, on women, on LGBTQI people, on black and brown communities, on our indigenous neighbors. This is an attack on all of us. This isn't a budget that is working to keep communities, families, and workers healthy and thriving. This is a budget that helps the rich get richer while working people struggle, living in poverty and exploitation, consumed by fears and worries of how we will feed our families, get to work, keep a roof over our heads, and mend our broken hearts and bodies. This is a budget that knows exactly what it's doing in order to keep us living in constant crisis and isolation. This is a budget that strips working people of life-sustaining social safety nets, traps them in poverty wages, and then punishes them for being poor. And while all of this is going on, House Republicans are also trying to strip National Relations Board power to prosecute unfair labor practices. They're trying to pass right-to-work laws that will cripple labor unions. And they are allowing employers to discriminate against applicants who are pro-union. This is a budget, and I'm going to say this very clearly because I think we need to stop dancing around these things. This is a budget that is intended to keep workers and people from organizing together. This is a budget that is intended to keep us isolated from one another. This is a budget that is intended from keeping us from understanding what we are living in day in, day out. It is systemic, it is cyclical, we've been here before, and I hate to say it, we will be here again if we do not organize, if we do not come together the way that we all have been saying. This is intersectional. This is not an isolated situation. This is something that is affecting all of us. When we are in constant crisis, we are operating on a fight or flight internal response. We have to think about the human condition and what it does to us inside. And when people feel that way, they don't feel empowered. They don't feel connected. They don't feel they have a community. We have to build that. We are the ones who will change this. We will call our elected officials and we will beg them to do what's right. But at the end of the day, it is us who will create this for our people. But if Congress really wants to address our country's debt, if they really want to address these crises, then they need to stop prioritizing their relationships with greedy, profit-hungry corporations and let the tax credits for the wealthy expire. They need to raise the minimum wage. People need money in their pockets. The federal minimum wage is $7.25. I don't even know, probably before I was born, sir. They need to stop imposing vicious and harmful cuts on life-saving programs that help people stay housed, fed, and healthy. They need to stop attacking unions that provide a viable solution for sustaining good wages and benefits. They need to cancel student debt. They need to pass universal health care. And most importantly, they need to find their moral compass and do what's right for the working people of our country. And on that note, I'd like to invite up our friends and partners in the fight, our friends at the New York State Council of Churches, Reverend Peter Cook and Rashida Tyler.
I'd also like to welcome up Mark Hannay, who is... So my name is Peter Cook. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Council of Churches. We've been around since 1893, working together to try to strengthen the social safety net in this country. A little history lesson. Back in the Great Depression, so many churches got together and they said, you know, we can't help people through charity alone, but we got to call on the federal government to provide a stronger social safety net because we cannot do this through charity. But we've always had a strain in this country of people who hated that idea and who really wanted to focus more on self-reliance and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and to try to limit the government's interventions into addressing our social problems. In 1980, that movement came to fruition when we were told that if we gave tax cuts to rich people and we increased military spending, that would cut the deficit. That was a lie. And in 2017, we were told that if we gave a $1.8 trillion tax cut, which largely benefited the very wealthiest, we were told that every worker in America would have $4,000 more in wages as a result of that tax cut. Well, that didn't work out. And so now we're at this rodeo again, in 2023 where the Republicans are very disingenuous by saying that they're concerned about cutting the debt. And so the way that they want to do that is to do what? Well, they want to gut the IRS to not make rich people pay what they owe and to pay their fair share. And at the same time, cut the social safety net. And if we were really serious about cutting the deficit, then we would be increasing taxes on the rich, and we would be increasing, not decreasing, spending on poor and middle-class people in this country. That would do more to cut the deficit, and it would also be a much more moral stance. So don't let them tell you that they care about the deficit. This is just a pretext to further their agenda, to line the pockets of those who are wealthy, and to punish the poor in the process.
Thank you. My name is Rashida Tyler. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the New York State Council of Churches. And as we were driving down here today, I kept thinking to myself how many times I have had to say the same things over and over again. I remember in 2018, advocating with the nuns on the bus when they came to our city in Kingston, and they, were fighting against SNAP cuts and fighting against Medicaid, cuts to Medicare and all of these different programs, and Medicaid, and all of these different programs. I remember in 2014, and I remember growing up in the I'll give away my age, but growing up, and being, taking the bus to Albany. I was actually with a sister of St. Joseph's where we started doing our advocacy and going to Albany and trying to advocate for increases in the HIPNAP budget and all these other things. And it occurred to me that time and time again, the attack is always the same. They come for those who are the most vulnerable. They come for those who need the most. And they do not offer a plan to help people, and they act as if they do the same thing over and over again, it's going to change or going to get better. Well, it hasn't. We've been employing the same trickle-down economics since the 1980s, and there's a clog in the drain. Nothing is working. So we need to change. We need to invest in people. Our government has a moral obligation to care for its people, especially those who are most vulnerable. Instead of investing in us, those who need the most, some are bent on taking away the social programs that are intended to help us, to put a roof over our heads, to feed our families. Today's social safety net is based on the alms system that compelled those Christians and those of religious background to give to the poor, to provide food and to provide drink to those who were thirsty and those who were hungry. House Republicans would have us abandon our moral obligation to care for one another so that the wealthy can grow wealthier. That's not right. Instead of worrying about a stalling debt ceiling negotiations and masking a neoliberal economic policy as genuine concern for our economy, we should be concerned about the check for insufficient funds from the Bank of Justice that Martin Luther King was talking about in 1963. So we are here to ask your representatives on Long Island to lean in for justice. To lean in for justice for jobs, for food, for housing for the people. Enough is enough. You gotta stand up today. Yeah. And now I turn this over to Mark Hannay.
Hi, I'm Mark Hannay. I'm Director of Metro New York Healthcare for All. We're a regional coalition of community groups and labor unions that work together on healthcare issues. And one of our projects is to coordinate the national Healthcare for America Now campaign here in New York State. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what's really happening in Washington. The House passed a bill about a month ago that would do all these really bad things to the social safety net, among other things, right? You've heard all about that from our speakers. What they're not telling you is there is another second bill that they have introduced, but not yet passed, that will make permanent the tax cuts that rich people got under the Trump tax cuts. And the cost of that tax cut, extending it permanently for the next decade, is $3 trillion. The cost of what they claim their debt relief bill will do is $3 trillion. So what they're doing is they're taking the $3 trillion from everybody who relies on all these social programs, and they're giving it to rich people. And the debt won't go down. They're saying it's going to go down, but it's not going to go down. They're going to give it to the rich people. So this whole thing is a sham from the get-go. And it's time for us to call that out. We've had 4 cycles of tax cuts over the last 40 years that have almost all gone to rich people and large corporations. And it's those tax cuts that have blown up the debt in this country. It's not the social programs.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone. All right, so we're almost at the end here, and now is the action moment, okay? And we like to say in the office, my name is Cristian, by the way. I'm the Director of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation for the congregation here in Brentwood. We think in 3 ways: prayer, awareness, and action. We prayed, we've become aware, let's take action. So today, crucial, it has to happen today. You're going to get, our buddy here, Colin, is passing these out. You have to call your representative. I'm going to say it 3 times. Call your rep, call your rep, call your rep. Not other people's rep, your rep. All right? And then tell other people to call their rep. All right? So you got a phone number there. You call your rep. You can use this script that's right here. There's also a QR code, okay, to scan to email as well. That email will go to Congress and the President. If you have any difficulty with the QR code, just notify me, notify Network, and we'll get you that link, and we'll help you with that as well, okay? But call your rep, call your rep, call your rep. Thank you very much for being here, and I'm just going to pass it off to Catherine for our final remarks, and thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Gillette. I'm an organizer with Network in Washington, D.C. I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Thera Farms for hosting us. I want to say thank you to all of our wonderful co-sponsors. I want to give a round of applause for all of our speakers. How incredible were our speakers today? Woo! If you're not inspired by now, I'm not sure anything's going to do it, because they were incredible. So thank you to all of our speakers. And thank you to you all for coming out, for hearing them, and for taking action. I really do hope you will go home and make the phone call, and then call a few of your friends and encourage them to do the same thing. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon.